We are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Guns and Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Sodini. And today I am joined by Kevin Berry, who's the co-host. He's also a super producer and the brains of Walk the Talk America at this moment.
Half a brain.
Half a brain, especially coming off SHOT, right? All three people that you see on the screen today have just come back from SHOT, and some of us haven't recovered because that's what SHOT is. It's a week of madness, and it's tough physically, mentally, everything, but it's awesome. It's an awesome experience. We'll get into that on the podcast. But today's guest is, to me, is a very special guest because when you think of the firearms industry, I think most people think of influencers and manufacturers and just gun owners. But there's this whole middle division that's like crucial to the role in people making their gun and selling their gun. That's distribution that a lot of people just don't even understand or know about. The average gun owner, if you say, hey, do you know Camfour? Do you know Lipsies? Do you know RSR? They all have no idea what you're talking about. And that's the way it is because it's the distribution level. If you have a gun or a firearms company that you want to distribute across the United States, distribution, two-step distribution is essential for your business and your success. Right now, some people can find a way around it, but for the most part, if the who's who all go through two-step distribution. And my guest today is somebody who came up in the ranks of the firearms industry, like I did, but I had nepotism. So I wouldn't necessarily be here if it wasn't for nepotism, but some people find a home in the firearms industry because they love it and they're attracted to it. They land here and they break in a certain way. And then, as we say in the industry, the people usually don't change. It's the banners behind them, right? Just because that's the way it is. It's a very unique industry to get involved in. But my guest today is the president of Camfour, which now holds a very near and dear spot in the Walk the Talk America universe just because of what we're going to talk about today. But Brandon Roper, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on here because let's see, we met a couple of years ago, right? And I think we met at the NASGW show. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong because I got SHOT Show brain. And I remember you coming up to me and you were like, "Hey, listen, I really like your cause. I wanna help out, but we're smaller than the bigger guys. Like we're not out here just cutting massive checks, right? Like, but we want to help." And you found a way to get involved and you donated to our auction, which is coming up on March 25th. That's a shameless plug for the auction, the WTT auction. And you're doing it again this year. But what was really cool is this year you came and approached me and said, I have an idea, right? And you basically, I'm going to let you tell the story. But before we get there, because I'll remind you, we'll go back to it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now. I want to hear that first, and then we can talk about what we did a couple of weeks ago at your show in New Orleans, which I think people want to hear about.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So I guess getting into the industry for me had a little bit of nepotism involved. I actually worked for a sporting goods store out in the Portland, Oregon area where I grew up and did that my senior year of high school and first year after I graduated. And there I met somebody whose father owned, well, I guess maybe his brother at that point, owned a rep group. And that represented Remington, Leupold, some stuff on the fishing side like Daiwa, fishing tackle and sterns and their PFDs and waders and all that kind of stuff. And I'd worked with him for a while and he was interested in having me come up and work at his fishing lodge in Alaska. And that didn't pan out right away. I actually went and worked on a yacht like the Below Deck TV show and did that for a little while and kind of got burnt out there. And so when I was getting ready to leave that, I called the gentleman up that had made that offer and ended up going up to Alaska and working for him. I'd come back home, was working at a restaurant, working on my degree, just working as a bartender and a server. And one night that family came into the restaurant and we were talking a bit and I said, hey, I'd really love to. They were asking if I was going to come back to Alaska. And I said, I loved Alaska, but what I really want to do is get into the rep group. So I'd be interested in any position you might have there. And so they gave me an interview kind of as like a office administrator type person to work with the one of the principals of the company I did that for about 6 months, and then there was an opportunity to move out to Colorado for a sales rep position, territory sales rep, where you cover Colorado, New Mexico, and then I think that eventually expanded a little bit. And like you said earlier, once you get into the industry, it's kind of just the banners that change. So I did that for a while, ended up going to work direct for Remington. That's probably the longest tenure in my career. Was at Night Force for, I think, 3.5 years after that. A short stint at Vista on their archery hunt side. And then most recently was at Smith & Wesson prior to being at Camfour. So I held roles, started at the bottom as an administrator for 6 months, and then a territory manager, got into national accounts, calling on the Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, those sorts of national chains, and then kind of back and forth in and out of management, and then was provided the opportunity at Camfour to come over as vice president of sales and marketing, and then was just able to get promoted to my current role as president and CEO.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of interesting. Because that's exactly how I see it's almost like a farming system of talent in this industry,
Exactly.
right? So many people start at a gun shop and then a rep group, or they find a way to get on with a rep group who has a position, right? Because they're skilled at selling. Maybe the rep that went in there was like, this guy's pretty sharp. Like if I had to pick him out, like he could make an awesome addition to the team. And then usually you end up at a rep group. And then I think a lot of times manufacturers really take to a rep and say like, hey, we have this position over here.
Yeah.
So it's like coming up in baseball in the minor leagues, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even for us, for my sales team, I mean, we've got some of our best salespeople started at the counter at a retail location. So, that's always somebody we're interested in interviewing for a sales position, because, if they've got the skills to be a top salesperson at the counter, not only does that usually transfer to distribution sales, but now they're selling back to, what they used to be doing. So it usually is a great fit for a distributor rep to come from a sales rep, to come from an independent retailer, especially.
And for the listeners listening right now, like, what is Camfour? Like, from your words? I mean, I just said it's a distributor, right? But like, what is Camfour?
Yeah. So, we're a distributor. There's, depending on the lines, up to maybe 24 or 25 of us in the industry. But I'd say there's 10 that kind of are broad distributors like us, carrying firearms, ammunition, and accessories. I would call us a mid-tier distributor. We're definitely not the size of some of the larger ones, but we're not the smallest either. We distribute the majority of the major brands, whether that be ammo, accessories, do a lot of suppressors. So, and to your point, we're the opportunity for most of the physical FFL holders in the country to purchase products and then resell them to the end consumer.
Yeah, no, and I just was at your show and all the big names are there. I mean, Ruger's and the Talos of the world and most of the heavy manufacturers there. So you're certainly not a small distributor. So I agree with you there. This is more of a personal thing. I think everybody has sort of an ego, especially when they're successful in management positions. And how did you know you were ready to be the president of this distribution center, right? Like it's a totally different level. Like you're going to be the responsible one, because it's a big ship, regardless of the size of it. It's still a big ship, and you could easily mismanage something and run it into the ground, or you could make it more successful than your predecessor, or you can maintain. I think it's just fascinating. I'm always interested to know how people are ready to take on that role. Like, did you feel like you were ready, or were you like, okay, we'll see how this goes? Like,
Yeah, I've always been, I think some of it to get to the level of president or CEO, obviously as you move up the ladder, the amount of positions available shrinks. So I've always been very driven. I started doing drywall with my dad when I was 13 years old in the summers to make money. So I've always been very driven, and it's always been my goal to run a company. So, a lot of the decisions I've made throughout my career were to do that. So I felt like I was ready, but to your point, you never know if you're ready until you jump in, because there's a lot of things I've done since being in this position that I haven't done in the past, because I came up through the sales and marketing side of the industry. And, everybody kind of, different presidents and CEOs at different companies come up through different channels, if you will. Some come up through operations, some come up through the finance side, some come up through the sales and marketing side. So coming up through sales and marketing, I didn't have maybe the operations experience somebody else would. So you never know, if you're going to be able to tackle that or not. Now, I have a fair amount of confidence that when I am given a challenge I haven't seen before, I'm going to dig in, I'm going to learn what I need to, and I'm going to go forward and do everything I can, to overcome that obstacle or that challenge. And so far, I've been able to do that at Camfour, and was part of what continued my succession there, and getting to where I have.
Yeah, to me, like if I worked for you and I was on the sales side, I would be more comfortable with somebody who came up through the sales experience, right? No, I mean, I
Yeah.
remember, because the way I came up from my family's business was I was like a rep for the entire country, right? They were sending me all over the United States every 2 weeks. It was like a state. Now you're a rep there. You know what I mean? Like, don't come
Yep.
back till Friday night or Saturday. Leave Monday, Sunday, and I would visit dealers, right? And I remember when I became president of Eagle, and we had decided to hire rep groups. I always felt like rep groups sometimes they get shit on. They do, right? Like if they're not producing or the industry slows down, like people get frustrated with reps, and they're easy stepchildren to beat, right? But I always felt I had a good relationship with my reps because I did understand what it was like walking into a shop, having X amount of items that you're trying to sell and trying to hit that hot spot to a dealer who is doing. I mean, dealers, especially when it comes to I work in a lot of spaces where mental health organizations or suicide prevention organizations really want to connect with the dealer, and they want the dealer to focus on what's important to them. And I'm like, you don't understand how much stuff a shop goes through on a daily basis, right? Whether it's looking for straw purchases, customer service, all the distributors that are calling with the dealer of the day, right? Just the fact that it's like a barber shop, right? Like people just hang out in there and talk to the guys behind the counter all day. Like there's so much responsibility that dealers have in running a business that, to me, like I understood that reps had issues and it wasn't the easiest sell. And then obviously I'm representing 4 or 5 different foreign manufacturers. And we all know manufacturers are like drug dealers. They all have the greatest product on the planet.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say, we are fortunate in this industry to have a lot of really quality products. I mean, as somebody who's been through a significant amount of the factories that are out there, I mean, we are really fortunate. I mean, there is some product that maybe is less stellar, but for the most part, especially the major manufacturers, I mean, they all produce good product. We're not in a industry with a bunch of terrible product in the marketplace.
Okay, I want to shift gears here, but I also want to ask you a couple more business questions because I do feel this is fascinating. I really do feel it ties into a lot of people's mental health, right? Like how do you make the decision on what products to carry,
Well, so
right?
so yeah, some of it, is on a wing and a prayer, right? Every once in a while you get one wrong. So far I've been lucky and I've gotten more right than wrong, which is helpful. But we have a purchasing team that has a lot of very varied experience. Sorry, I've got a buyer that's been with the company for I think around 37 years. So he's been through all the ups and downs I have, and then some more. So he brings a wealth of information and company information. Then I've got a buyer or my director of purchasing. He actually came from the retail side, so he's worked both for independent retailers and national chains in compliance and purchasing and management. So he brings a different viewpoint. And then I have my varied experience and bring a different viewpoint. And then the other side of that is we have anywhere between 16 and 20 sales reps calling on dealers on a daily basis, providing feedback, as well as a sales manager that has over 10 years experience just in the firearms industry. So it's not like I'm the only one making the decision. Now, usually I'm the one making the final decision and the one taking the blame when it goes really wrong. But I have a lot of support and we've built out a really good management team and a team in general that it helps make those decisions a little easier.
No, that's awesome. So you kind of came up in this industry. I mean, you did. You tell your history. This history, the history of I think we're a very misunderstood community, right? We sell firearms. I mean, we sell all things for sporting goods too, right? I mean, it's not just firearms, but were you aware of the stigma of the industry when you first got into it? Did you, like, for me, I didn't understand that someone could hate me just because I sold or worked for a firearms company. I had never encountered that. You know, the first time I encountered that, and I've told this story before on the show, I thought the lady misunderstood me. The lady, it was a girl, right? Like that I was attracted to, that I was doing great with at the bar for the first hour until I told her what I did for a living. And
Right.
then when I saw that she was upset, I said, "Oh, she must think I sell guns illegally." And I remember saying to her, "Oh, no, I sell the guns legally." It didn't help. Were you aware that a stigma exists with the firearms industry?
So I'd say not when I got into it, no, because I started in the industry, like I said, almost 20 years ago, and I was 23 years old, I think, when I got into the industry. So I grew up in the country where firearms were just commonplace. You know, my parents didn't support firearms per se, or they wouldn't buy a firearm for me to be able to go hunt before I was 18. So when I turned 18, I bought my own firearm and went out and started hunting. However, I'd been going with friends that, you know, as soon as we could drive, I started going. My best friend hunted, and he's the one who kind of got me into it. So I would go with him, even though I couldn't hunt myself. So I think for me, I didn't really feel that stigma because, again, growing up in the country, it was commonplace and didn't know that existed. But it might not have been hitting on a girl in the bar, but I did, you know, find that fairly early on. A similar situation to you where somebody just asked what I did, and I said the same thing, and they're like, and they said something to the effect of, I think Lord of War with Nicolas Cage had been out at that point, and they were like, "Oh, like Lord of War," and I'm like, "No, like, you know, your little gun shop down the road, you know."
See, yeah, Lord of War made it actually better for me, to be honest with you. Before Lord of War, I think a lot of times when I would get into these conversations, and I eventually just started lying to people, like when I met them at a bar, because they're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, I work for a bicycle manufacturer. And then usually like the conversation died, right? Like it's like no curiosity. But when Lord of War came out, Nicolas Cage made it look very cool to import firearms illegally and sell them.
Right.
And I remember like that became the thing where it was the default to, oh, like Nicolas Cage in Lord of War. And then my answer to that was always absolutely, just like that. Yeah, I've done that. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. And the reason why I'm kind of going down this route with you is because you did something for Walk the Talk America that I think is very unique, and it doesn't happen very often. And that is, and we're going to jump into this, what you did for Walk Talk America. But what I love about this industry is I think it's filled with so many good people that are so misunderstood, that have the best intentions, that when it comes to the subject of saving lives and mental health, we've just never known where to fit in, right? Because we've been accused of a lot of things: being baby killers, standing on graves, not caring. All we care about is arming people. Like the list goes on and on. I know you know I'm missing a few, but there's probably some you can add to it. But for me, what you did when we talked to NASGW was really the epitome of the firearms industry for me, for most people, right? It was like, we're not at this position to where we could just donate money to what we see and Walk the Talk America. But what you did is you got creative and said, how can I do something more than just donate a gun? Like how can we help? And you came up with a plan, and I want to kick it to you because I want you to tell the story of how you came up with it. But it was absolutely brilliant. And I've seen with my own two eyes, after you pulled this off with the success, that it got wheels turning in other people's brains, which once again, I think we just, as an industry, sometimes we sit back and we're like, we don't think about it hard enough. And I want to kind of listen to you talk through how this came, because it was brilliant. I didn't even think of it. Right. And Kevin and I are the ones that are constantly thinking of ways to get people involved that don't, you know what I mean? That isn't necessarily stroking a check, because not everybody has that ability, right? Like there's people want to help. So I want to thank you for it, give you your flowers, because it was awesome. But I also want to hear like the process. How did you come up with it?
Yeah. So, you know, going back to that first time a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was that we met, I had actually, my predecessor was the one who had told me about what you did, and you know, kind of got me interested in your cause. And for me, this has always been a really important thing, because I think, to your point, you just said, a lot of times in this industry, we just kind of do the same thing over and over again, and we maybe don't think outside of the box. And I've said for a long time, those people who you just said who call us baby killers and all those other things you listed off, they're not looking for a solution to the root cause of the problem. So, and I've said for years, if we as the gun industry don't do anything about it, right, we're going to get things forced on us that one, we don't like, and two, aren't going to do anything to stop the problem. You mentioned we had our show in New Orleans this year. I was on a plane about 24 hours after the event took place there to go get set up for our show and host our show. And, that was not, there was a little gunfire at the end, but the majority of that tragic event was done with a car. And it's something I've said forever, a firearm is just a weapon for people to do evil. You've now seen people do it with cars, people, the Oklahoma City bombing. There was a mass stabbing recently in Europe. I don't remember which country it was, but it's not the tool used, right? When somebody's ready to do evil, they're going to do evil. And the firearm is just the thing that gets blamed. So when I found out that you were doing what I had wanted somebody in the industry, and I had never stepped up and done and didn't even know how to do, the fact that you took that on was very powerful to me, and I wanted to help however I could. So once we kind of met, and then we ran into each other a few times, a few different places, and we were always talking about what can we do. And to your point, we weren't in the position where we could just write you a big check. When it came time to kind of start getting into our show planning last year for this year's show that just took place in January, I was like, man, what can I do? And I said, I can, at a minimum, I can give Mike a platform. I can let him come to the show. I can let him talk to our dealers, to our dealer base that comes, and I think we talked about, if you had POP material that you could send to the dealers if they were interested, and then they would put it out in their shop, because that way you can get your word out. And at a minimum, spreading the word is going to help you raise more funds down the road, bring more awareness to your cause, and just hopefully help Walk the Talk America in general. And then once I had that thought, I was like, you know what? We've got a lot of great vendor partners, some that already work with you and support you. I said, I bet I can get them to donate some guns for a raffle, and we'll hold a raffle. And, some of I'll just run through the vendors to give them a little shameless plug here for their support and donation. But,
Please do.
Ruger donated a Marlin, Glock donated a Glock, Springfield donated one of their 2020 targets. We had a Mossberg Thunder Ranch, Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0, Heritage lever action 44 mag, Banish put in a 22 suppressor, Swamp Fox put in an optic and mount, and then Winchester donated a neon sign. So those were the prizes they had to win. I felt like the prizes were good enough that we could put a fairly high price tag on the ticket, and you were going to have a pretty limited pool of people to win. So we ended up going with $100 cash, $100 cost for per ticket, and we sold that to the dealers. We had some vendors who supported it. I allowed all my employees to buy raffle tickets as well. And we were able to raise a fair amount of money with that, which was great. And then on top of it, every dealer I talked to and saw at registration, I was giving them a little pitch on Walk the Talk America and make sure to go talk to you. And I can say pretty much everyone I saw walked right from our registration table over to you. So that was really great to see, again, the support we had across the board from our vendors with the donations, from the dealers with their donations to the raffle, but then also the time they spent with you learning about the great things you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kevin, real fast. I know you got a question, but at one point I actually went to Brandon and I go, hey man, how are you pitching this? Because I feel like you're doing it better than I could, because we had nobody that had a question. Like most people are walking up and they were like, this is awesome. So glad you're doing it. And I'm like, do you want to hear like what, and they're like, no, it's pretty self-explanatory, but like, not getting pushback. And tides are changing. Obviously, the more that we're around every year, the more people hear about it, or it's starting to make more sense to them. But it was really funny. But Kevin, go ahead, ask Brandon what you.
Brandon, what was the process like of learning about Walk the Talk? You said your predecessor kind of introduced you to, and then behind the scenes, who did you have to kind of gain the support of or any green lights? I know you're kind of at the top position, so maybe there weren't any of those, but what were those conversations like as well?
Yeah, so it was my predecessor who said, "Hey, this is a great guy. It's somebody I'd like to introduce you to, and if there's any way you can think of, and this is while I was VP of Sales and Marketing, if there's anything you can do to kind of help him, and he kind of said the same thing. We can't just write him a big check, but if you can think about any ways we can help him, donate a gun to the raffle, whatever, which we've done for a couple of years and continue to do or will continue to do." So it was literally just from that, I got on the website, I looked at the free mental health scan that was on there, learned about the training of the mental health providers and getting them to understand, like from the gun owner standpoint, what I think, Michael, you said it to me once about somebody who's not familiar with guns. You say, "Hey, I've had a rough day. I need to go tear off a couple hundred rounds." They may not understand that it's just a great stress reliever. It's no different than somebody golf. I'm a golfer as well. It's like going and hitting 100 balls at the range. It's this great stress reliever. So I kind of learned, just again, went through all the things you had on the website, looked at some various other things, some of the podcasts, listened to those. And again, just the more I found out about it, the more interested I was. And anyway, we as a company and me personally could help support the mission. In terms of the support from the company, I am, in the top spot at the company per se, but we do have an ownership group as well that I report to. So everybody's always got a boss, right? And I will say, of all the places I've been, this company is always, or the ownership group is always happy to help, and they're always looking to support a cause. So we allow donations to our dealers that do events, different charity events, even some of our employees, if they're personally involved with an event, we'll donate a gun on their behalf for the auctions and similar things like that to help them raise money. So there wasn't even a question from ownership. They thought it was a great idea, and there was no selling it, again, because they support that so often.
Yeah, it's good to hear because it's a topic that we as an industry have been kind of conditioned to be like, maybe we shouldn't touch that, right? Like it's gotten a lot easier for us in the last 6 years, but I remember in the beginning, and still to this day, like I think sometimes it gets run up a flagpole and somebody at the top's like, should we be touching on this? Should we be addressing this? Maybe it's better we just do nothing and stay away. And I completely understand that, right? Like, as much as it frustrates me, I do understand when people are like, the brand or the company is the most important thing. And maybe sometimes there's places you shouldn't step. Hopefully we'll get over that as time goes by. Every year that passes, it gets a little bit easier, but it has been a barrier to entry for us. And that's one of the reasons why I loved what you did for me. Having me come out there, having me be there at a table, because I can explain it for myself. They hear it from the horse's mouth. And it's just one of those things where, Kevin knows this. We were just at SHOT Show, and, 6 years into it, we still will sit down into meetings and people will say, well, I've never heard of you. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
for you to get me FaceTime in front of different companies, that's like stroking that giant check, right? Like that, to me, like that's just as valuable, because it is, I'll be honest, some of the people that you got to donate to this raffle, I have approached them and they have not donated a gun to Walk the Talk America, right? I'm not going to name names, but like some of the people on that list, I'm like, wow, he got them to do that. That's amazing.
yeah.
I've been trying to get them to do that for 5 years, and I get nowhere, and you did it. So like I said, I really appreciate. The funny part is going down there, and I said this to Kevin, I was like, man, the goal would be awesome is just to get, the airfare and the hotel paid for. Like the rest of it's going to be gravy, like just the opportunity to be there. And we far exceeded that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
my expectation level was, this is new territory, whatever happens. I mean, I think you had sort of an expectation level, but there has to be a part of you that said this could totally be a flop.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like when you said you didn't know what I was saying, I mean, I wasn't saying a lot, but my biggest concern was Well, let me reel it back a little bit. So first, yes, I had a goal in mind of how much money I'd like to raise, which we ended up doubling. So that was great. Again, big thanks to everybody who donated, whether that was a gun or money for the raffle tickets, including, I do have to give one shout out too, because we just found out the other day, one of the raffle winners, Superior in Texas, they won a gun and then they redonated it back to Mike. So did want to give them a shout out for that too. That was really cool.
Really cool.
And they supported through ticket purchases, strongly as well. So that was really neat of them to donate that gun back, and big shout out to Austin for that one. But my thing was, hey, if we can raise $5,000, that's great, right? But if I can get Michael's word out, and to your point, there's still 6 years in people who don't have a clue what it is, what you do, or that you're even associated with the gun industry. So if we could get that word out, that would be great. So my pitch was simply, hey, do me a favor, go check out Walk the Talk America. He's here. We've got a great raffle, some really cool prizes to win. You could see they were listening, they were being polite. And then as soon, because I started out with, it's a mental health, Pro 2A mental health charity. When I said that, as soon as mental health came up, to your point, you kind of got a little concerned look in their eyes. But as soon as I told them about your previous life and that you were an industry guy, all of a sudden it was like a light switched and they walked right over there and started talking to you. So, and then again, can't thank all the dealers enough, whether they purchased in the raffle or not. I know you had a huge stack of cards of people who were willing to disseminate the information for you. I know I talked to multiple manufacturers who were there and said, hey, go check out his stuff. If you can support him, that's great. And so I think we accomplished the goal for sure.
100%, well beyond it. And there was, I think, I sent out 11 dealer packets after. And a dealer packet, so everyone knows, it's free. I give them to any dealer that requests it, but it basically comes with stickers. It comes with the free and anonymous mental health screening cards. And sometimes if they want, I'll throw wristbands in there, but it's just something that people could put on the counter or put it in, however they want to use it. But, to have like 11 more dealers say, and when I wait for them to request it, I'm not sending it to somebody that is going in the trash. Like, I need the dealer to say like, oh, I would totally put these out on the counter, right? And when we got that, so we hit it on a dealer level. Financially, you helped. Those that know Walk the Talk America, we pretty much tell you exactly where these expenses go to, so you can kind of see what your donation goes to. And sometimes we let people specifically donate for a certain cause or whatever we're doing, right? Like we get people that come through and donate, but yeah, it far exceeded that. And also too, we're talking about giving people flowers. I want to give Kane from Talo some flowers too.
For sure.
We had a number that we talked about, like we wish we hit. We came very close to it. And thanks to you and Kane from Talo, it was like, we're going to make up the difference, and you didn't have to do that because once again, far exceeded expectations level. And it was, but I mean, that just shows you what kind of guy Kane is. And I can't thank everybody. For me, and I think I told you this when I was there, it brought back memories because I've been on this side of the industry for the last 6 years, and I haven't been to a distributor show in a long time. And I used to do the traveling circus to all the distributor shows. You know what I mean? So like, it was really fun. The only thing and I knew it made sense for me to be in the lobby, and I was glad I was there. But like, there was a part of me that was like, I want to be in there with you know what I mean? Like, just because like, it's the camaraderie that no one understands unless you're in the industry. Like, some of my best friends in this industry were competitors of mine because we were a traveling circus and we were always in, wherever, whether it's Fort Worth and then Harrisburg and then Vegas and wherever you had a small town like Reno.
Yeah.
That's my Kevin dig. That's right. But that that's what makes it fun. And then obviously when I'm there and I'm talking with the manufacturers reps that are there and the dealers there, when we're having drinks later on at night and we're going to dinners, like it's another opportunity for me to talk about what I do and get a full understanding, so yeah, that was awesome. What do you think? So like looking at the industry, because I'm curious, like we all know, I think some of the blind spots we have when it comes to mental health and firearms, but Why do you think that we have those? Is it because of what we talked about earlier? Like just the way people have already made up their minds about us, and it's easier to throw your hands up and I feel like we do a good job of supporting veteran organizations, but in my opinion, we have forgotten about the regular customer. And if we, if we look at suicide as a whole, right? So let's put better mental health, right? Because we don't even want people that we want to catch them way before they're at that point of crisis. But we are losing like 74 people a day to suicide by firearm. And you could extrapolate like out the veterans. If let's say that number's 22, right? That's the number that most 22 a day. We still have, 52 customers, 52 regular everyday firearms fans that are taking their lives. Why do you think we sometimes overlook that part? And I know that's a hard question, Brandon.
Yeah.
Solve the world's problem.
Right. So, I mean, I can only answer for my own personal opinion. I think just in where we're at today in society and life, right? Everything's so busy. Before we jumped on today, we were talking about what a crazy day it was. And it seems like every day is a crazy day. I think it's just easy to skip right over that, to go through your daily routine and you get lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it just gets lost in the everyday world, and you're not constantly being hit with it. So I think we just kind of forget.
No, and that makes sense. And but real quick, we're dog people on this show. I have 4 dogs that love to try to sabotage any type of meeting or podcast that I have. What kind of dogs are we working with back there?
A Catahoula leopard dog. That's the one you could hear the most. She's a mutt, so like pit bull and Catahoula leopard dog. And then the other one was supposed to be a pointer mix, but he's a hound mix of some sort. So.
Okay, nice.
I was hoping the mic wasn't picking up that background.
No, trust me.
But clearly, they made an appearance.
Yeah, they have an opinion. No, but the dog, like I said, my dogs run this house. I'm like a prison guard that's just there to kind of get in their way every once in a while. So listen, I totally get it. No, we always love it. We're dog people here. So no, but back to what you were saying. I agree. I think sometimes it's easier just to have someone approach you and say, this is what we're doing. This is how, day-to-day life gets busy. And there's no shortage of veteran-centric, suicide prevention, mental health organizations out there that cater to vets. But it is just interesting to me that we have never really examined the rest and really focused. And that's what I'm proud of with Walk to Talk America, because what I found, because I didn't understand when I first started this, I was like, I want it to be gun owners. I want veterans are part of being gun ownership, right? Like there's an overlap if you look at a Venn diagram. Vets, right. Yeah, I mean, everybody's attracted. First responders are all attracted to our industry. But I was like, no, I just want this for gun owners. And I was shocked by the amount of support I got from people that served or are currently serving. And I always ask them, like, why are you attracted to? So many of them say, because you don't treat us like wounded ducks. Like we're all gun owners. Like it's a great space. So I think it's really cool. But I also, sometimes I think I'm having meetings with manufacturers. I want to sometimes just be like, why don't you see that this is important for everybody? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. We can cast such a wide net and get all gun owners to be in a healthier space, as opposed to being like, this particular gun owner we're going to focus on, which I have no problem with. I don't want people to hear like Mike's up there saying like vets shouldn't have special attention. They should, right? And there's a disproportionate amount that struggle and take their life. And that is tragic, especially for how they serve this country and what the Constitution means to them and what they're doing. But we're also losing people that have that same energy for this country, and they're our customers. And I'm going to get off the soapbox, but like, I always look at the industry and it's like, man, I feel like we could really dominate this and we could do better. We don't owe anybody anything, you know what I mean? But we should want to do it for ourselves. So,
Yep, I agree.
We got some chatter from Clover Tech. We just saw Clover. Clover, thank you for everything at SHOT Show. Clover's a podcast host he had a podcast. He was doing it with Ghost Tactical. They were doing it out of the Bursa booth, and every day they were giving us a platform to represent Walk the Talk America, talk highly of Walk the Talk America. So thank you for what you did at SHOT Show. But you said, I really enjoy going to MBS. It's different but fun at the same time. Might not get there this weekend. MBS is, for those that are listening, is a buy group show. Part of the traveling circus of shows that a lot of manufacturers do. And it's, I would say it's for deals for maybe smaller dealers that sometimes, it's a conglomerate of dealers, a dealer network. Very interesting stuff, but the other side of the firearms industry. Did you ever work with MBS, Brandon?
Yeah, with trying to think with my days at Remington and the Rep Group, we did all the buy group shows. So NBS, Sports Inc., Worldwide, Mid States, and yeah, so it's a group of dealers, usually strong independent retailers, come together and buy like a bigger customer.
Yeah, exactly. Once again, part of the traveling circus.
Yep.
I mean, the other thing CloverTac said is not just customers, employees, business partners, family, people close to us. At some point, these self-deletions do affect us where we are. Yeah, 100%. And Clover, you've always understood it and seen it. You're like, Brandon, to me, some people just get it. It's like you don't have to do a lot of explaining for it, but help them try to be the best man they can be in a world that seems to not value them. And that's well said. Yeah, definitely.
Brandon, what would your message be to maybe some of the leadership that is hesitant of like, why should our company take the risk on this? We don't have to, maybe somebody else would. Because a lot of the meetings in shop, there'd be employees that are like, oh, we really love what you do, but we're hitting a barrier above and we can't seem to break that. What would your message be to those individuals?
I mean, for me and from my standpoint, again, I go back to we as an industry need to do something to fix the problem. Nobody else is going to, right? To me, it can be, I have the personal piece of it where I'm very personally invested, right? But then you can look at it even from a selfish standpoint for the industry of, again, we have to attack the problem. Nobody else is going to attack the problem. We're only going to get blamed for being part of the problem. So if we go and address that, like Mike has been doing, and yourself, Kevin, then we can control the narrative. We can be the ones out there trying to fix the problem. So I think it's very important for the leadership of, especially the larger the company, the more important I feel it is. And again, I think at a bare minimum, it's self-preservation of the industry, of our gun rights, of our constitutional rights, and I think that's all very, very important, as well as addressing the mental health issues we have in this country. And obviously Walk the Talk is focused on gun owners and from a pro 2A standpoint. But I mean, I think we all know we do hear this. It is in our face all the time, the mental health struggles that people across the country deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think another part of the issue could be that we as the 2A community sometimes give special powers to the mental health side. It's almost as if like they have the outreach, they know how to deal with it. Like, because you go back to how this organization was founded was us talking about it over dinner with a complete stranger, right? And she asked what happens during a mass shooting, and I said everybody blames us. We blame mental health, and nothing ever happens. And it goes back to us always saying, well, it's a mental health issue. Mental health should do something about it, or let mental health take care of it, right? Just like mental health would defer to us about gun safety. Well, like, I have this gun here. Like, let me talk to the gun guy. Like, mental health is not going to just pick up a gun. So sometimes I think that we think that maybe they have something, or maybe it should be on them because they're the experts here, not realizing that being able to diagnose people with mental health issues is not going to it's not going to solve the problem, right?
Right.
And that's where I saw like our industry, and I say this all the time, and I'm sure a lot of mental health people eye roll when I say it, but I love to say it. I'm like, I believe that we could be the leaders in this space, which is very bizarre for people to hear. Like, how can the firearms industry be the leaders in providing mental health resources and solutions to this issue? But I truly believe that. You know what I mean? Just because the access we have, like, think about what you creatively thought of to help Walk the Talk America. And that's because we have access to the manufacturers. We have access to the dealers.
Right.
your show alone, I know there's 11 more dealers in this country that are actually addressing better mental health for gun owners and suicide prevention now that they have our kits out there and they're going to be pushing our cards. Like, you are responsible for that. Because no, I mean, it's true. It wasn't going to happen if you didn't create the vehicle for it to happen. You know what I mean? Like, just think about that.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's great. Again, can't thank, all the dealers that supported, the vendors that supported. It was, it was really big, again, because I'm personally invested in what you do. It was great to see everybody support it. And I think that goes to what we were talking about earlier. I think you are making inroads, and, it is getting easier. And I think you will start to get more people on board.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it is moving in the right direction. And Clover says if all the industry CEOs were like Brandon, it would be amazing for the 2A. Maybe one day we'll get there. Thank you, Brandon. So,
Thank you.
I mean, people are going to appreciate it, right? It has been one of those, it's so much easier now to talk about it than it was in the beginning. Right. And in the beginning, it was just like a lot of like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I don't get it. I don't see it. And I when it clicked, it just seemed so obvious to me. It's like, why can't we go in there? Here's another thing that I want your opinion on, right? And you're not going to have the answer for this, but it's an opinion piece. Why do you think we as an industry dumb ourselves down when it comes to certain things? Like, one of the things that really irritates me in our industry is when people are like, you can't talk to anti-gun people, or you can't go there because they're either going to trick you, or be careful when you talk to media, or be careful. You know what I mean? And I'm always looking at them like, I don't think anyone can do that. Like, I challenge anyone to trick me or try to make me look bad. Why do you think we dumb ourselves down sometimes? Is it because it's an emotional topic and like sometimes people can't stay calm? I mean, that could be it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think our 2A rights have been under attack for long enough. I mean, since before I was in the industry, right? We kind of forget about the Brady Bill, but I mean, that was before I was even in the industry.
Yeah, feel good. That we call that feel good legislation.
Right.
Legislation that absolutely does nothing, but like people think we're doing something.
Exactly. So, I think with those rights being under attack for so long, that people are concerned that, especially, I've been at some of the major companies I've been with, it's a hard and fast rule. You don't talk to the media. Now, I don't usually want to talk to the media anyways. Normally, you don't want me on camera or talking in a forum like this, but anything to help you out, I'm willing to do.
And you're doing great, by the way. You're doing great.
I appreciate it. But I think you don't want to get tripped up, I think, is one concern. And then the other, I think there's also a fear factor. I know with me, how are they going to cut if it's a sound bite, if it's a video, how are they going to cut it and manipulate what you say to not be what you actually said or what you intended? So I think that's some of the fear, maybe, from our side in terms of why we maybe dumb it down or just avoid it in general.
Yeah, I think back in the day, to me, like, because I've been here generationally, right? Like, I mean, my first SHOT Show was in '97, so obviously I'm 27 years old. No,
Yeah.
I look a hard 54. No, so before the internet was as common, before social media, right? I think the fear of being misquoted could definitely be really devastating because you didn't really have opportunities to explain yourself. So like if someone takes a soundbite of mine and cuts it up, or they take a quote and they use it out of context, at least I have a platform. Like, I have my own platform, and I've made relationships with guys like Clover and Gun Freedom Radio and Ghost Tactical and Coley Noir, right? Like, I can go on and explain myself or address it and point it out. Whereas, like, 15, 16 years ago, you couldn't just take to a platform to explain yourself or go into comment sections.
Right.
So I think it needs to, I think as technology in our own space grows and ways to get a message out, I think we need to kind of get back, like start leaning into some of this stuff and having a conversation about it. I just was at the research conference for harm reduction when it comes to guns in Seattle. And, there was a handful of us from the firearms industry that were there. And the rest were researchers. A lot of them were anti-gun, but to me, it's like when you have solutions and you're able to kind of not be backed into a corner, like you said, or tripped up. It makes it for an easier conversation to have with people. But I really, one of the things that bugs me about the industry, or I wish they'd see the value in it, and particularly I think of guys like Colleen Noir. Like I was with Colleen Noir when he was on the Bill Maher show, right? And I remember thinking, oh man, he's going to get the Bill Maher show. He's going to come off great. And this would be the first of many shows that I guess you'd consider center left, that he'll be the gun guy. Like he'll be the gun guy at CNN. He'll be the guy that people will call, that will bring this voice of, a rational voice that will represent our industry. And it didn't go anywhere after Bill Maher. And I was like, did the gun industry not see the same show I did? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like we need more representatives out there that are willing to get up there. And I'm not talking about after a tragedy, get on stage with a bunch of Parkland kids. That was a no-win situation for our industry.
For sure.
To me, that was the equivalent of me fighting Ronda Rousey, right? Like it's not, I look at it as a no-win situation. Either I'm going to beat up Ronda Rousey and all my friends are going to be like, congratulations, dude, you beat up a woman. Or Ronda's going to whip my ass, which is probably most likely going to happen. And then I'm the guy who got his ass whipped, right? Like
it's okay. You and Turtle both.
True. Yeah.
Entourage.
I love the Entourage reference. Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, but I look at the industry and it's just like I see these blind spots and I think we can easily fix them. We just got to have more people that are confidently out there. And I get it. Like, a lot of people are like, that's what you're here for, or that's what Colleen is there for. Keep pushing. But sometimes I wish the industry would help pushing this message out and being just super confident that we can't be caught up. And we're going to make great arguments. And a lot of it is anti-gun is a tricky one because I don't think a lot of people are really anti-gun. I think they take that stance because they're gun ignorant. And then when they start seeing some blind spots, then they start going, okay, wait a second. We're not great at, I think, conveying the blind spots that they may have. And we got to get better at that. But it is an emotional thing because all it could take is one idiotic phrase that comes out of somebody's mouth and calls you a baby killer. And then you're like, you know what?
Right.
It.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to walk away from this conversation.
And I mean, I'll say, to that, some of the ignorance for non-gun owners, I don't think there's anybody that's more hurt and devastated by those events than our industry. I mean, it's tough for anybody to see those kind of tragedies unfold, but I can tell you, again, this is some personal preaching, but it's not the instrument used, right? It's the evil done. And we just saw it with New Orleans, and it wasn't a gun that did the evil. So, but when it seems to be guns more often, I think that's where we get pigeonholed and the industry gets pigeonholed. And to your point, if they don't have the knowledge of even the gun itself, let alone the industry, so that's where, again, I think you get that emotional reaction versus the logical one going, well, we shouldn't be blaming the tool for the outcome.
Yeah, so I want to touch on the fact that your show, with the worst timing on the planet, right? Like shows up right as somebody does something super horrific, right? But it was crazy because when that happened, it was funny because I was talking to my wife and she was like, do you think that show's going to be canceled? And I was like, yeah, people got to keep going, right? And that doesn't, I'm not even talking about because it was a firearms industry related show, but I'm also talking about like restaurants had to reopen. People had to keep moving. One of the first things that I did after I learned about the tragedy is in my brain. I remember like when I first started this organization and I really wasn't as polished as I am now when it comes to talking about these topics and not being backed into a corner and things like that. Like I would love some redos on some podcasts because I'm sure if I went back and listened to them, and not that I've become a master of the English language and podcasting, all these things, but like over time you just get better at it. And I was on this show that's hosted it's called Pod Therapy, and it's a great show. I love it. It's two therapists out of Vegas, and they were inviting me on the show. And I was so happy to be there because I was a fan of the show. But then we had like 2 mass shootings happen I think it was like Dayton. I can't remember. Right. Too many of these things happen. It's unfortunate, but so then I came on the show. They were way more interested in having me on the show so we could discuss these horrific events. And I kind of got blindsided going on the show because they were hurt. Like we were all emotional, but I thought they were going to be a lot like open to me. And when I got on there, I felt a certain energy, and I was super nervous, right? And I remember at one point, the host was saying, "Is it fair that people want some of these things banned because they're in an emotional state and like whatever?" I remember like my answer was, "Well, we could rent a truck and take that truck and go right down to the Vegas Strip and take out as many people at some of these events happen," right? And I knew that wasn't necessarily what people wanted to hear, but it was the truth. And we saw it a little bit in Wisconsin at the parade. Like I think of these like one-off events where it's happened, but recently we saw it happen in Europe quite a bit, where people were taking trucks and things like that. But then we had it happen in New Orleans. And it took a lot for me not to post that clip and be like, haha, I was right. Like, see, there's an example, because I really feel it was inappropriate to do, right after the tragedy. But it's true. What you're saying is true. Like, we can't go through life just trying to take away things because they harm people. It's not a good way to get to the root cause of the issues. But man, we're down in New Orleans. How safe was New Orleans? I felt like I could have walked down Bourbon Street with $100 bills tattooed to my outfit.
It was, I think it was definitely the safest city in the country when we were there. I've never seen a police response like that to anything. So it was crazy. I did want to touch on something you just said, Mike, which was, or a second ago, about, restaurants had to reopen and all of those things, and that was definitely a thought. We spoke to ownership and, got their take on it, and they felt comfortable with the police force and the response of New Orleans that we would be okay to go forward. And the majority of our dealers supported us as well, which was great to see. But to go even further, right? Like, to me, although our show isn't a massive show like SHOT Show in Vegas, it's still big enough, and we still bring income to the area. 2 blocks from where this event happened, we hold a big dinner that Ruger co-sponsors with us, and that was at the restaurant right next door to the hotel, and they just barely reopened. So, I felt it was important to still, one of the considerations was to support the city, after a tragic event, and I think we did that. So
I 100%. One of the restaurants that I went to the first night I went out after arriving to New Orleans was on the street that it happened. Like, people were hit right outside of this restaurant, and I was talking to the waitress, and she said that they had meetings about this, and they were conflicted, right? Just like we were conflicted about, like, is this the right thing to do? But you're absolutely right. Like, it's trickle down effect. Every night people were going out to restaurants and supporting that local community. And I think people appreciated it, because there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm going to stay away." And I remember the same thing happened for me with Mandalay Bay. After the Mandalay Bay tragedy, everybody was avoiding Mandalay Bay, the hotel. And I remember I went to eat at Mandalay Bay, and it was empty. It was up top. It was the Foundation Room restaurant, which is right there. And I remember how grateful the staff was. And I remember the chef coming out and being like, personally coming up to people's tables, being like, "Thank you for coming here." Because so many people were, and in my mind, I was like, Mandalay Bay is the safest hotel on the planet to be right now. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, that nothing's going to happen there. And New Orleans was the same way. But yeah, no, I think you made the right call. And I think being mindful of it is obviously, that is something that you have to do. But at the same time, if you just canceled it, that's doing no good to anybody. It doesn't matter how you feel about firearms, or, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's doing.
Yeah, I mean, the trickle down effect, like you mentioned, of, the employees at the restaurant that we did that dinner at, the employees at the hotel, the few hundred rooms every night that needed needed people to clean them. I mean, it did support, a fair amount of people who were obviously hurt and reeling from that tragedy. Being there 24 hours after it happened, knowing the owner of the restaurant that we held that dinner, that seeing the pain in these people, I think canceling and them not having that support would have been worse.
Brandon, do you think it's almost like the perfect storm? And I'm going to assume, just from both of our backgrounds in marketing, that we might share the same perspective here, but we have the gun industry that's almost conditioned to always have their shield up, be on the defense, and never really go out, present the solutions that are out there from the two-way community. And the maybe anti-gun or gun neutral people have no either even idea of different solutions or how things work. Is that kind of where your mind comes from, coming from the marketing background, where if a PR, something negative comes in, your and I response is, hey, let's probably address it so we control the narrative and we can address it from our perspective and get that out there, instead of maybe some traditional businesses are like, ooh, let's not touch that negative thing, or ooh, there's a bad comment on Facebook or Google. Is that kind of accurate in my assumption?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a difficult one, with especially anytime something not only is sensitive but then is an emotional thing. Different people react different to different emotional events, and it affects them differently. And I think that's where it gets scary as somebody, especially the head of a well-known consumer brand. It gets hard to know what's the right thing to do. Personally, I do think you're better off to control the narrative. And again, why I support and am so interested in doing anything I can to help Walk the Talk America is because, it is kind of what I've felt we've always needed. And it is addressing that. It is trying to control the narrative. And honestly, I think a lot of it, back to Mike's point earlier, is it's getting the information out there for those people who don't already know it, right? People, the our everyday customers, our normal people who are out at the ranges shooting, who are going hunting, competing in shooting competitions. Those people know, right? It's those people in the middle, to your point, the gun neutral, they're not opposed, but they're not gun owners. Those are the people we really need to educate. And then quite frankly, it's good for the industry because a lot of times those are the new shooters that we pull from. They have somebody who takes them shooting once and they enjoy it. I mean, that's the thing people, I think, that aren't gun owners don't understand how fun shooting sports are, whether that's competition, whether it's hunting, whether it's just another way to spend time outdoors, shooting on national forest land or at an outdoor range. So I think there's so many good things about the industry that those people don't get. It's my opinion that, yeah, we do want to share that. We do want to tell the good things of the industry. We do want to talk about all the great people that are in it, that do things like support Walk the Talk and care, and they're, the gun industry is not the villains. We're actually the people, out there who are providing people the ability to recreate, to defend themselves, to, protect their 2A amendment rights. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that some of us in the 2A community have is that every gun owner thinks exactly like we do, right? Like they understand liberty, they understand the Constitution, they're dying on this hill, right? And they don't realize, like, especially when you own a gun company, I had to learn that not every gun owner thinks alike. So I had to be careful with the things I said because, like, I still run into gun owners that love guns. I love to use my mom as an example. Like, my mom is the perfect example. I like to throw her under the bus on this show just because, she's funny and like, I love her thought process, right? Because even though, like, I completely disagree with it and I feel like I'm just constantly there to smash whatever thing she says, I have to remember that she is also like a lot of gun owners, right? Like, my mother will look you right in the face and say, I have no problem putting my name on a list or going to get a license, a mental health eval, even though I always have to remind her there's no such evaluation that could predict the future and how you're going to act with a firearm, right?
Right.
There's no such thing as Minority Report, but my mom is one of those people that doesn't see any issue with, if I want to get a gun, maybe I should have to talk to a therapist, which I totally disagree with. And I don't know what, but she says it. And I have to remember, there's so many gun owners like her. You know what I mean? And we can't just keep being like, okay, they're super patriots and, they hate bootlickers and they think just like this group of people that we are very loud and we're kind of in this echo chamber with. A lot of gun owners are like, yeah, man, I have a gun in my house and it's never sees the light of day. It's over there in the safe, but in case I need it, it's there. But I'm not going to the range. I'm not,
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we can forget that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've met all manners of walk throughout my nearly 20 years that some are, to your point, own the guns, never touch them. Some are avid users of the product, on a weekly basis. And a lot of them are people you would never expect would be gun owners, but they are. And I think we do forget that a lot, because we're kind of in our own little bubble, and the people we interact with the most are usually the more dedicated people, participating in the sport of shooting or hunting or whatever it is. So I think we probably, get a little bottled up in our thinking and kind of forget that those people are out there sometimes.
Yeah. And a lot of them are what keeps us in business, right? Like
100%.
It's someone at Eagle who used to sell 60 to 80,000 guns a year just to civilians. I had no law enforcement and military contracts. Not all 60,000 of them felt that way about liberty when it came to fire. Right. Like you'd be silly to think that. So you kind of have to sometimes keep your opinions to yourself and understand, like, showing blind spots, having to explain things, like keeping the patience, talking about things that become like red flag laws, barrier to entry, statistics. Like, to me, we're always afraid of data, right? And I'm like, we should love data, because anybody that wants to use data against firearms, that's my opportunity to be like, see, this is why you need me. Like, this is why you need Walk the Talk America on that wall.
Right.
Because we have all the solutions, right? Like lean into it, not be afraid. But yeah, it is kind of a fascinating thing. But all right, so listen, we're coming up against your time. I want to be respectful of it. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I think it's awesome for the listeners to get another perspective from a position in this industry that really sometimes is in the background. The power with the distributors is there, right? I mean, there's a whole organization called NASGW because it's there. But one of the things that I've absolutely been blown away by is the support that I've gotten from distribution. Because here's the thing. There is no doubt in my mind that distribution helps me in this cause. And that goes for everybody. Brian Tucker at Davidson's, the Lipsies over at Lipsies, you at Camfour. You guys are doing this because you truly believe in it and you want to make Earth better. And the reason why I know that is because this isn't even a PR play for you. It really, it is, in terms of like, yeah, someone could be like, Camfour's doing, that's great. But the average gun owner, once again, is not going to know distribution or care about distribution. They know gun shop, manufacturer.
Yep.
And maybe influencer, right? So to have this pocket of the industry that kind of sits in the background, super powerful in terms of providing, getting the firearm from manufacturer to consumer by having the relationship with the dealer, distributing it across the country. It really warms my heart that this group of people has said, yeah, like, I just want to support this. It's not going to get me media. It's not going to, it's not going to get me these things. So thank you for what you've done for Walk Talk America. And thank you for really diving into this, leaning into it, and not being afraid to come on this show and talk about it. I really appreciate it. So now would be the time to plug anything you want. We have dealers that listen to the show. I mean,
our shameless plug is obviously we'd love to have you. If you've seen Lord of War, there's something there where he says how many people own guns and how does he arm the rest of them? I mean, that's me. I'm a capitalist, right? I want to sell every gun we can. So we'd love to have you as a dealer. You can go to camfour.com and check us out, fill out a dealer application, and we'd love to do business with you. But to your point, not the intention of coming on the show. It was, again, just to support you and what you're doing because, like I said already, as soon as I found out what you were doing, it was what I had hoped and honestly had no clue how to do or even a thought to ever try and do myself. So thank you for everything you're doing and fighting the good fight, getting in places a lot of us other industry people can't.
Yeah, no, and I want to be clear, like I was the one who brought up coming for you. I walked up to him at the end of the show, Kevin, at his dealer show, and I go, "Are you media trained? Like, did you ever do media?" And he was like, "What?" Because I know I was just thinking in my head, I was like, "Yeah, I want him to come on the show," and not everybody is ready for that, especially when you just don't do it on a consistent basis, right? So this is completely my idea. You did not like come up to me and be like, "Hey, I want to be on the show." I don't even know if you knew I had a show. But one last question before we let you go. How do you tend to your mental health?
Well, that's an interesting one.
You're like, "Hey, let's do another show."
Right?
You got another hour?
Honestly, like my hobbies are how I tend to it. You could say shooting, right? But that entails a lot. Some of it is shooting. Some of it's teaching my son to shoot, taking him hunting. Like that's some of the best time I've spent. It's so much more rewarding. I can't even think the last time it's been maybe a year or two since I've gotten a big game animal, right? But my son shot a buck bigger than the one that's on the wall behind me right here last year. And we spent, a full week, the whole season out there chasing deer, chasing elk and just spending that quality time. So getting away, getting into nature, whether it's hiking, rock climbing, shooting, hunting, fishing, that's probably the main way I like to, deal with my mental health. And then maybe an odd one you don't get from a lot of people on your show or a lot of people in the industry is I love to paint. So as a kid, I remember watching Bob Ross on PBS, and one day I took my wife, I got it for a present, I think, to do one of those wine and paint things. And we did that, and that was it. Like I went home, I ordered all the stuff to start painting. And that's a great one when you can't get out, if wintertime in Colorado, weather sucks, it's storming, can't get to the mountain to ski or whatever it is, sitting down and painting for a day is a great stress reliever as well.
And you're right. That's the first time anyone's ever brought up painting. No, but that is awesome. And I like that you did the Bob Ross reference because I'm married to a Slovakian, straight Slovakian. She sounds like a vampire. So it's really cool because I get to introduce her to these things that just make absolutely no sense to her, but are fascinating. Like next time we're having drinks, I'll tell you about the village people story. Like explaining the village people to a Slovakian, like when you're drunk is like, there's no easy way to do it, right? It's so bizarre, but so like fascinating. And I remember the first time I showed her Bob Ross because I was watching a documentary on Netflix or something about Bob Ross. And like, I was just like, he was therapeutic for a lot of people because he was so calming and just like positive. And it's weird. He's like one of those, like to me, I'm going to say a reference a lot of people aren't going to know it is like the Kid Cudi. Like every Kid Cudi in the 2000s was like a therapist for a lot of the youth, right? And like Bob Ross is that same way, like the unintentional therapist.
Yeah.
Like comfort.
Yeah, I mean, you may not know this, but go check out your Spotify account and there are Bob Ross playlists and people actually fall asleep to just playlists of his show.
I did not know that, but that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
That does not surprise me at all. That's very cool. So, but anyways, Brandon, thank you for coming on the show today. Kevin, thank you for everything that you do. Right. I want to thank all the listeners, all the sponsors, everybody that makes this thing work. You're much appreciated. Much love to everyone. And until next time, we wish you better mental health.